Uptown TV this, with the maddest and the baddest review now miss. Need some self-time, so we need it. Looking how we are the realest. Bruh, for one being representing a man for Uptown TV. You understand?
I stand. I acknowledge my ancestors, the ones who came before and are still here. I acknowledge my ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. It is one who sits in the hands of Amen-Ra, for it is Amen-Ra who directs the timid, who rescues the humble and the needy, who gives a breath of life to the one whom Amen-Ra loves, and grants him or her a long life in the west of Thebes. Oh my God, Lord of Lords, Amen-Ra, Lord of Karnak, give me your hand and save me. Shine upon me and sustain me. You are the only God, and there is none like you. You are Ra, who rises in the heavens, the God who created men and women. It is you who hears the prayers of one who calls on Amen-Ra, who saves a man and a woman from the hands of the violent, and makes the Nile rise and flow for those who are in Amen-Ra. Amen-Ra is the perfect guide. Amen-Ra is a perfect guide, the perfect guide for everyone. When Amen-Ra rises, men-Ra who make people and birds to live, who supplies even food for mice in their holes, as well as for worms and fleas. May Amen-Ra grant us an honorable burial after old age, so that we may be safe in the hands of Mother, Father, God. The oldest known text there is, older than all the other ones. The names of the ancestors is to make them live again. Speak the names of your ancestors. Do not forget to pour libation for your mother and your father, for your ancestors. Today, October 13 on the island. My name is Kabu-Ma'At Kheru. Gonna be with you until 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is when the big A comes in with the Sunday sunshine. You are inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. Access to the rivers and the beaches and the land. What kind of mind would claim this beautiful, beautiful space that belongs to the universe? What kind of mind would claim these spaces and deny the masses of the people access to these spaces? Who are these people who would first of all make the claim, and secondly, who are these people who would facilitate the claim? So I'm hurt just by the thought of it, much less the act of it. I suppose there are many of us who are like me, who have come into this space at this time, in this form, and find the very idea of this denial as to water, to the river, to the land, that there are many like me who just cannot comprehend and will not accept that status quo. So here we are, finding ourselves in a fight. And we'd rather not fight for the land, for access to the water, for access to the rivers, for access to the sea, for access to the beach. We'd rather not fight. It is a fight. It is a fight that we'd rather not have. But we're being bullied into it by a heartless, government who have lapped themselves and wrapped themselves and lap up themselves in public-private partnerships. Know what they have accepted? We can guess. To make them continue to sell out the people in the way that they're selling out the people. The conditions that we face today in 2024 on this island, Jamaica, mirrors exactly, down to the I's and the T's, mirrors exactly the conditions that we faced, our brothers and sisters faced in 1865 in Jamaica. We're around that time again in October. And it was right around this time that the people of St. Thomas and the people of St. Mary, because it wasn't just St. Thomas, Portland, St. Mary, Kingston, St. Anne, that the people of Jamaica, feeling the oppressive forces of the public-private partnerships, knew that it was life, liberty, or death. They knew that. Because there comes a time in our lives when these are the only options that we have, or if these are the only options that we have, there comes a time in our lives when we are called to be warriors, standing up for justice, to be liberators. In 1865, round about this time, starting from early last week it would have been, with the conditions being exactly the same, I don't know if you understand the extent to which the conditions in Jamaica in 1865, the conditions that led to the Morant Bay War, I don't know if we're understanding the extent to which this time mirrors to the T those exact same conditions. I think for the very first time in our history, or for the very first time since 1962, for the very first time since 1962, we are faced with the exact same conditions. It's as if we've gone through a time warp and come out of 1865 on the other side of this black hole, on the other side, to find ourselves in 1865 all over again. The spirit of Paul Bogle might not rise from St. Thomas, but the spirit of Paul Bogle will rise, because here we are. We have no choice. The spirit of Letitia Gohegan might not rise from St. Thomas, but the spirit of Letitia Gohegan will rise. We have no choice. It is a fight that we'd rather not have. I sat in the balconies of the Parliament a few years ago as to watch the result of years of work by many of us to have Paul Bogle and those who fought and died in the Morant Bay War, to have their names being cleared, their records be expunged, and to have them recognized in the very same spaces which is the Parliament that made them and their actions criminal. Their acts of liberation, criminal acts. And I listened to all the speeches by all the politicians who rose to speak. And without exception, Prime Minister, opposition, members of Parliament, without exception, they recognized and lauded the action of Paul Bogle and contextualized why the actions of Paul Bogle were necessary at the time and why they were liberatory actions, liberation, the actions of a liberator. These speeches are available. They are public audio, and you can find them in the Hansard, and you can find them in the newspapers. And we covered that widely here on this program. And I listened to the question I posed coming back from Parliament, where I watched all of that unfold. And the question I posed in this space, the Sunday after that happened, was, if Paul Bogle, being recognized by the Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his Minister Bobby Montague and all who rose to speak that day, as I said before, the speeches are public documents, you can find them. And so the question I posed, if Paul Bogle, if, as you say, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, that the actions of Paul Bogle are actions of a liberator, that these actions were necessary to free the people from oppression, the Jamaican people. If Paul Bogle, as you said in Parliament, Prime Minister Holness and all the others who rose to speak at the time, if Paul Bogle was right to lead the Morant Bay War that some of us call, some of you still call the Morant Bay Rebellion. But if as you say, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Paul Bogle was right by the members of Parliament, the ministers of government, opposition and ruling party, if Paul Bogle was right to rise up against the system, Sam Sharp was right, if Paul Bogle was right, if Chief Tetchy was right, what shall come cannot be avoided. If Paul Bogle was right, because we find ourselves in 1865, the conditions are the same. It's a mirror image. It's a reflection. It is the very same. It is all of that and more. That we find ourselves in a Jamaica today in 2024 that mirrors exactly on the other side of 1865, mirrors exactly the conditions under which Jamaicans suffered. The denial of access to land, the denial of access to land, the denial of access to the water, to the rivers, to the sea, the denial of access to spaces, the high cost of living, the conditions mirroring slavery. And when the people of Jamaica wrote to the Queen of England to say that the conditions were as bad as they were and they could no longer survive under these conditions, the response from the British monarchy which was the head of state of Jamaica, was to work harder, have less holidays, because productivity was a problem. There wasn't enough productivity on the island. So when the people stood up in Morant Bay, in St. Thomas in Jamaica, right before the Morant Bay War, or as you know it, the Morant Bay Rebellion, when the people couldn't take it anymore because their children were dying from hunger, because because of lack of work, because of denial of access to land, because of injustice in an unjust justice system, when the people couldn't take it anymore, they wrote to the head of state of Jamaica, which was the British representative on the island. And the Queen of England wrote back to the people of Jamaica, I'm not making this up, to say, work harder, we need more productivity. In other words, when the people of Jamaica in 2024 rise up to say that this is an oppressive system, that we can't afford to send our children to school, that we are being denied access to land, the private sector organization of Jamaica, which represents the enslavers on the island of Jamaica in 2024, have said to us, we need more productivity. The day that you celebrate your liberation and you liberating yourself from slavery, we will take that day from you. And we will do one better. We'll also take the day you celebrate as being politically independent. We'll take that from you. Because we want more productivity out of you. Labor is what we want. And so we see you as a labor force. So you work harder. Productivity is what we want. It's the very same word that the Queen of England used in 1865 to the people of Jamaica who were suffering. And this is why Paul Bogle and them had to rise up against a system. I sat in Parliament and watched as their records were expunged, and I listened to the words of Prime Minister Andrew Holness, of Bobby Montague, and everybody else who spoke there. Many spoke that day. And they all said that Paul Bogle was right to stand up against that system. If Paul Bogle was right, what shall come cannot be avoided. If Sam Sharp was right, what shall come cannot be avoided. If Chief Tetchy was right, what shall come cannot be avoided. And this is why we say the private sector organization of Jamaica must apologize for the proposal it has made regarding the amalgamation of independence and emancipation. They must not just apologize. They must seek sensitivity training. They must undergo a period of learning Jamaica's history, understanding Jamaica's social history, Jamaica's political history, Jamaica's labor history. The private sector organization of Jamaica cannot just be here benefiting from the labor of the people of Jamaica without understanding the history of Jamaica that has brought us to this place. They must be made to do a course, a sensitivity training course on enslavement, the Ma'afa, the auction blocks. Must be made to do sensitivity course on the process of emancipation and those who fought and died for emancipation. They must be made to understand the true history of Jamaica without Wilberforce and them. They must be made to understand the role that Jamaicans played in getting us where we are now. And they must understand 1865 and 1938. The private sector cannot just be on this island in this anti-Africanism with this anti-Africanism behavior. They must be made to, one, apologize, and they should do that quickly, and two, then to educate themselves. And it must be a sensitivity training, because we're going to err on the side of caution to say they know not what they do. We know better than that. But we're existing in this place, on this space, on this island, together, and they control the wealth of Jamaica. They control the wealth of Jamaica. They've got the power. They also control the politicians. I'm going to take a break and come back, because I have something to say about that. Earlier, about the times we're in, how they mirror the 1865 political, social, socio-economic period in Jamaica, and how the people of Jamaica wrote to the head of state, England at the time, to say our situation is dire, we are being denied access to land, we can't get work, our children are suffering, we are suffering, we're having a very hard time. And the monarch, the head of state of England, wrote back to the people of Jamaica to say, work harder, give up some of your holidays. You've got too many holidays. We need productivity. You can't be celebrating Emancipation Day and any other holiday. You need to bring them together, and you need productivity. Well, what came out of that? Because that was an insult to the people of Jamaica. And what came out of that is what we now celebrate on this island. The Morant Bay Rebellion, it's called, but it's the Morant Bay War. We understand that in revisiting the history. So there's a lot of information out there on that. Clinton's book on Color for Color, Skin for Skin. That is a very good book to read. Make sure you have it. I'm going to give you the proper topic in a little while, the proper title in a little while. But that's to me one of the most excellent texts written about the Morant Bay War. Is that text that I just named? All right, let me tell you what it is. But before I go there, it happened that many years after 1865, in this space, the Africa Forum, for 30 years at least, we started a petition, we started protests, we started programs and all kinds of activities and events to expunge the records here in Jamaica of Baba Paul Bogle and all of them who fought and died in the Morant Bay War of 1865. And that took many years and a lot of protest activities. But we weren't the only ones doing it here. We know that Tom Tavares Finson, for example, was somebody who took that up seriously too. We know also Professor Vereen Shepherd was somebody who took that up very seriously. Later on, we were joined by Bobby Montague because at the same time we were calling for the records of Chief Touchy to be expunged. We started that right here in this space at IRFM along with Professor Vereen Shepherd. And so that it became a wider activity, a wider call for the records of our liberators to be expunged. And as I said in 2016 when we sat in Parliament and listened to the result of our activism, that one of the persons who gave one of the most poignant speeches was the Minister of Culture, Olivia Babsy Grange. And she spoke then about that many people at the time, 1865, that the action of Paul Bogle and all the warriors and liberators 1865 in Morant Bay, that this was seen as rebellion, it was seen as treason. But Babsy Grange stood up in the Parliament and she said, without apology, she said that these were rather, and I'm quoting her now, acts of liberation with abundant moral justification. Acts of liberation with abundant moral justification. She went on to say, consequently, our heroes ought not to have the stain of criminal conviction accompanying their role as national heroes. She went on to say, this government is of the view that our heroes should be pardoned by the state as a means of blunting the edge of the sword of injustice and as a symbolic recognition of their struggle. She went on to say that the government acknowledged that a statutory pardon expungement, which originates in Parliament's supreme legislative power, is required to totally absolve them of any criminal wrongdoing in keeping with Section 90 of the Constitution. And she said, and I quote now, a statutory pardon would have the effect of saying that our national heroes, including Paul Bogle, did not commit any criminal offense, as the acts cannot be construed as criminal in the first place. Said, when this legislation is tabled in Parliament, generations to come will look back on that act as a defining moment. I want to say to Minister Grange, that was a defining moment indeed. That was a defining moment. But I also want to say to Minister Grange and to the Prime Minister Andrew Holness, here we are again. Here we are again. Read the history. Study the times. Look at the socio-economic conditions in Jamaica in 1865. But you have to do so with an open mind. Prime Minister Holness, put aside the speeches, put aside the documents that you're reading from, put aside the talking points. You're going to have a paradigm shift. Let it go. You're going to have to place yourself in the shoes of the masses of the Jamaican people and walk around in those shoes for a moment. Put yourself in the shoes. Put away the platitudinous perorations. Put away the speeches. Put away the political verbiage. Put away all of that and put yourself in the shoes of the Jamaican. The Jamaican who is neither PNP nor JLP nor any P. The Jamaican who is trying to do more than survive. The Jamaican who is trying to thrive. And put yourself in the shoes of that Jamaican. Before you do that, go back and read up on the conditions, the socio-economic and political conditions that led to the Morant Bay War. Because if, as you say, this was right, this was the work of those who were involved in the process of liberation. If, as you said, Minister Grange, that Paul Bogle was right and cannot be seen as a criminal. If, as you said in Parliament, that these are freedom fighters, This is urgent. And why is this urgent? Because what shall come cannot be avoided. Slavery, enslavement, the slave trade, forced unpaid labor and exploitation, resulting in the illicit enrichment, ill-gotten gains, and perfidious wealth of European colonizers over 400 years. And their contemporary descendants in this time and beneficiaries who we see now are benefiting from them legacy, and who now, right now, as we speak, continue in the mindset of profits by any means necessary. This is the epitome of injustice we face, an unjust justice system. Inequity shall come, cannot be avoided. I speak with the permission of Paul Bogle and the ancestors who fought and died in the Morant Bay War. I want you to look up the Morant Bay War because I am speaking at a time in 2024 today, which marks the anniversary. Remember, we're moving from October 11, 12, this is 13. Professor Ivan Van Sertima reminds us, whether something happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 10,000 years ago, or 5 minutes ago, it occupies the very same space in your consciousness once you become aware of it. This is how it works. So I am speaking in the time and space that is made even more so the very same space in my consciousness by the fact that the socioeconomic and political conditions are the same as 1865, October. We're about to celebrate and to remember the Morant Bay War. Heroes' Day is coming up on us. A lot of our people do not remember. Why Heroes' Day? In the same way, a lot of our people do not know why Emancipation Day or why independence. And this is why the descendants of the enslavers and those who oppressed us from time immemorial till now can tell us to forget August 1. I watched All Angles on Wednesday night, hosted by my colleague, Dion Jackson Miller. And while she herself did not take a stance, I listened closely to the discussion. I was very disappointed, to say the least, with what I heard, with the exception of Stephen Golding, who tried so hard to explain why this is beyond just a holiday, and he did a good job at it, by the way. So kudos to you, Stephen Golding. Great job on All Angles on Wednesday night. But by the end of the program, the host said, well, since we are on the same page, and I said, this is what you call quantum entanglement. This is what's happening across Jamaica with all of this discussion. We shouldn't even be having these conversations because it's an insult, it's an affront, but we're having them because those who control Jamaica, those with the power, those with money, have made a move on Emancipation Day. And we find that all we can do is to talk. But people power, our struggle for right and justice is eternal. So long as man through conceit and selfishness arrogates to himself the authority because he is strong to abuse and trample upon the rights of his fellows, we will ever find cause for protest. The strong, through their unfair methods and practice of injustice in this unjust justice system, will not always last. Their day and time will be numbered. So let us work and pray, in the words of Mwalimu, for the restoration of Ethiopia's and Jamaica's glory. For in that time, and then only, will black men enjoy the full rights of liberty and justice. These are the words of Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Keep up the spirit of service, he says, service to Africa and to the race. Fight the good battle of organization to end, and surely victory will crown our efforts. Fight the good battle of organization to the end, and surely victory will crown our efforts. Number 11, we remembered the 159th anniversary of the Paul Bogle-led confrontation with the state in Morant Bay to settle the persistent hardships of poverty, of unemployment, of landlessness, among other injustices meted out to the masses of the Jamaican people, the Africans on the island of Jamaica, in the wake of emancipation. This war against injustice took place in the year 1865. We recall that 2024 mirrors that year, a year of poverty, unemployment, landlessness, lack of access, and a myriad of other injustices. So the war against injustice took place in 1865 here in Jamaica, the last big war we had against injustice. Incidentally, that very year, you might recall that Leopold II of Belgium was crowned king and soon captured the Belgian Congo. And that's a whole other story. Even Auschwitz-Birkenau pales in light of the unprecedented terror and the tyranny that Leopold II orchestrated in the Congo. A genocide. He slaughtered 10 to 13 million Africans. We do not hear much about this. Throughout last week, the airwaves and the social media were abuzz with the ongoing debate on the insensitive, coercive skullduggery by the PSOJ to bury what is for us as Africans one of the most significant celebrations on the island. It is more than partying. And whether we party, whether we jump up, whether we don't leave our yard, whether we lie down in our bed all day, whether we just go in our yard, go cut the grass, whether we go out of the road, go just sit down and watch a vehicle pass. Whatever we do on August 1, and we hope that we will do more. But the point I'm trying to make is that August 1 on this island represents for us liberty and freedom from chattel slavery. Do you understand? Do you understand? The commemoration of emancipation in the unholy amalgamation of emancipendence, which we say is a bad word, is the ongoing conversation now. But we're looking and listening to people like Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who says, this requires some plain speaking, and for the sake of Africa, let us speak plainly. A sergeant for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah says the objective of African unity can be seriously undermined by tribalism. We Africans mean to be masters of our own destiny, our own continent. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of Africa. After the Morant Bay War in 1865, the Jamaica Constabulary Force was formed in 1867 in response to the Morant Bay Rebellion, the Morant Bay War, under the aegis of the British colonial government. And the point of it was to defend and to protect their interests, the British colonial governance, which comprised of state officials and members of the plantocracy, which now we called the private sector organization of Jamaica. Today, Jamaica's governance framework of British monarchy proxy state officials and the PSOJ plantocracy. The conditions that plagued the masses of the Jamaican people, the black-skinned, black Jamaican people on this island, the masses are we. And we're going to have to call a spade because at the end of the day, we must speak for ourselves, because this is more than colorism. This has now become a racial matter. So those conditions of 1865, the conditions under which Africans, black people were suffering in 1865, still persist with over 700,000 citizens labeled in Jamaica as squatters, landless, limited access to water, high levels of unemployment, high cost of living, food insecurity, high levels of illiteracy, and a failed education system with a persistent and deliberate exclusion of a history and culture of the black majority of Jamaicans. Should the need, this is an existential crisis. I have a microphone. This is an existential crisis. Should the need arise for organized mass protest to defend our human rights, for survival, for justice and equal rights, with whom shall the JCF and the JDF stand? You want me to pose that question again? Should the need arise for the organized mass protest to defend our human rights, for survival, for justice, and for equal rights, with whom shall the JCF and the JDF stand? And the PSOJ must be informed. Emancipation is a sacred, singular African ritual. The PSOJ must be informed. Emancipation is a sacred, singular African ritual. The PSOJ must be informed that emancipation is a sacred, singular African ritual, not merely much ado about nothing and feckless revelry. The PSOJ must be informed that emancipation, August 1, August morning, is a sacred, singular African ritual. If you touch that, if you touch that, if you touch that, if you touch that, color, skin for skin, marching with the ancestors into war at Morant Bay, and you'll recall that this was on it still is on our Running African book club reading list. We read this book and interviewed Professor Clinton Hutton about it also. And just to read the blurb that it's published by Ian Randall Publishers, and just to read the blurb that they have on Amazon. It says, a brutal suppression of the uprising in Morant Bay in October 1865 under the governor, Edward Eyre, and the ensuing reign of terror is a watershed in Jamaican history. Paul Bogle and his allies, overwhelmed by colonial firepower and betrayed by Maroons in service to the British Crown, were mercilessly cut down by the elites, local and foreign, who justified their actions based on the continued belief in the subjugation and suppression of the black race by the white race, emancipation notwithstanding. In Color for Color, Skin for Skin, Clinton Hutton deconstructs the ideological, cultural, philosophical, economic, social, and political rationale for the uprising by formerly enslaved Africans and their descendants, and its violent suppression by the colonial forces, and articulates its significance in the development of a national black consciousness. This consciousness and fight for freedom and justice, he argues, has strengthened over periods of Jamaica's short history, evidenced by the emergence of Garveyism and Rastafari, the 1938 labor riots, and articulated in Jamaican popular music, and more recently, the resurgence of revival worship. Using fascinating first-hand accounts of the uprising and its aftermath from the report of the Royal Commission of 1866 and numerous newspaper reports, among other sources, Hutton presents the Morant Bay Rebellion squarely at the forefront of the continuing expression of a national complex in a post-colonial society. So that's a blurb from Ian Randall Publishers. The book is available on Amazon. Color for Color, Skin for Skin, marching with the ancestral spirits into war at Morant Bay. So I want you to get that. All right, let me take a break and come back. You know, in the break, I'm going through some of the messages that I'm seeing, and thank you so much for the interactive, those who are leading that interactive process online, because it's on every social media platform. So thank you so much for that. A few questions coming into me personally from people who I know, have led me to think that we need more time, not just on IRA FM, but generally across Jamaica, to be part of that process that helps to inform and to educate. I know that we expect a lot from our schools. Our schools are failing. This we know. That is the isness of things. It is what it is. How do we pull back from the precipice to which we're heading? That is a question we must answer. And we don't have much time. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is death. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why, because the question was asked, why do I feel so strongly about this? And why do I continue to speak about this? We can go into history and talk about all of that, because I'm talking about all of that for morning, but I want to come down to something very simple. In Jamaica, how politics work is that political parties are supported by the private sector, financially supported by the private sector. Political parties could not exist without private sector funding. Individual politicians are funded by the private sector. Civil society participants who might appear to be activists when it's not detrimental to the private sector. are funded by the private sector. So we have a funding industrial complex. Civil society is not so civil. Civil society doesn't operate without funding, public funding. Private sector funding. A lot of civil society operatives are funded by the private sector. We're talking about bread and butter issues here. People whose livelihoods, civil society now I'm talking about, depend on private sector funding, private sector money. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, political campaigns depend heavily on private sector funding. So when there's going to be an election without private sector funding, the food can't eat. You're likely to lose the election if you don't have some heavy private sector funding on your side. Elections take money. Individual politicians are funded by the private sector. How that line up with the Integrity Commission is something we can talk about another day. But why is this important at this time? The private sector organization of Jamaica is no fool. I'm going to explain how I discern this thing. This requires some plain speaking. Under the word of a sergeant for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, let us, for the sake of Africa, let us speak plainly. There's an election, we're in election campaign mode here on the island in Jamaica. Election is going to be called pretty soon. It has to be called pretty soon, constitutionally. Bear that in mind. Political campaigns are likely to fail without private sector funding. Will fail without private sector funding. In Jamaica, that is the reality of things. It is what it is, and we're dealing with the isness of things. The private sector organization of Jamaica is no fool. This might seem like a small thing to you that the private sector just put this out and make us see where it go. I think it is very strategic. The private sector, and if you listen to those spokesperson coming out from the private sector and on behalf of the private sector, because we have civil society representatives talking on behalf of the private sector. Some of these civil society representatives operate within and are members of the private sector organization of Jamaica. This is strategic. The timing of the announcement is strategic. It is just before the election. I believe that the private sector organization, if not checked on this, will use this whether deliberately or not. I think it is strategic as a leverage. And if this is a leverage, politicians who have not really come out to say where they stand, have you heard any politician commenting on this latest proposal, Re-Emancipation Day and Independence Day, amalgamating in one whole wheel up and turn down and turn up yourself and wind up your body holiday? Have you heard? By the way, what did the Prime Minister say on this? What did the Minister of Culture say on this? What did the Minister of Commerce say on this? What did the Minister of Education say on this? Have we heard anything from the opposition? What did the opposition say on this? What's the opposition response? Did I miss it? Because I have a tendency to miss things. Help me, please. I'm not saying they didn't say anything. I'm just saying I didn't see it. So help me. This proposal has come out right before the elections. Do you understand the point that I'm making? That even if we hear politicians come out to say they are not with this right now, remember, political campaigns cannot work without private sector funding. And individual politicians depend on private sector funding for running their own individual campaigns in their own constituencies. A lot of people are silent on this. Politicians, for the most part, silent on this. What is the opposition saying? This has far-reaching implications, and it might be a situation where strategically this is being leveraged against campaign financing. This is my thinking. This is my thinking. They have said that they have done surveys and asked the Jamaican people if they want to give up the Emancipation Day as a public holiday. That's Emancipation Day, August 1. They do not understand. That's why they have asked this question. And give up August 6, Independence Day, as a public holiday and just roll everything into one weekend and keep rolling it over. One thing we know, that for those of us who were alive on 9/11 when the Twin Towers collapsed in New York, that from that day to this day, every year on the day, the 11th, every single year on the day, 9/11, America sets up a red carpet miles long, and everybody is called to a space in the Capitol. And the names of those who died in 9/11 are read one by one by one by one by one until all the dead are remembered and recalled, so that the people of America will not forget. And whether it fall on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, as long as it's on the date, the carpet on the podium and the names are called. Do you know why this is important? We must not forget those who died. We must not forget the dead, and we must do this as part of our duty and as ritual. Now, I'm going to go back to something. We must ask each politician, each member of parliament, each minister, we must ask the opposition leader, we must ask the prime minister, we must ask each minister with portfolio and without portfolio, where do you stand on this call? They say they have done a poll, and the majority of the Jamaican people want this proposal that is being put forward by the private sector organization of Jamaica. We have seen an attempt from persons within civil society to obfuscate and to confuse the people of Jamaica, because if you cannot convince them, confuse them. So now we have people saying that it is 6 days. It's a lie. It's a lie. How do we know it's a lie? That we're going to have 6 days of celebrations. It's a lie. It's a bare-faced, white lie. It's a lie from the pit of hell. I'm going to tell you why it's a lie. This period that we're in right now, this is October 13. What did we do on October 11? Why is October 11 significant? Here we are talking about the Morant Bay War, the Morant Bay Rebellion, the uprising. What are we getting ready for? We're getting ready for Heroes Day. What's going to happen on Heroes Day? Well, you just need to listen to the radio. I don't need to say, do I need to say more? I can clarify it further, I know. The situation is this, that once, maybe for a year or two, you'll pretend as if August 1 means something. Remember, we had to fight. I was part of the fight for Emancipation Day to be reinstated, you know. I was an active part of that fight. We had to fight for this, for it to be reinstated as a national holiday. First time I met Lakim Samaj was on a stage on Hope Road, where this is where they now have the Chinese Benevolent Society. This is where Sister Minnie had her restaurant. It was 1991. And Sister Minnie called me. IRFM had just started in 1990. And she called me to say, listen, we have been trying for years now to get Emancipation Day restored as a national holiday. And we're so happy for IRFM. We're asking you to come in to be part of this system, part of this activism, and to co-host a concert on which Third World was performing and others. To co-host a concert. And this concert was to raise awareness and to call upon the government of Jamaica to reinstate Emancipation Day as a national holiday. That was 1991. When I took the stage, my co-host was a man named Lakim Samaj. Right on the stage we met. Right on the stage. Now, that was my first foray into fighting for the reinstatement of Emancipation Day. Later on, in 1996, we invited Dr. Ben, and the group had widened to include Ken Jones, Mr. Jobson from Port Maria, Ken Jones, the former politician who's written so much about Molamu Marcus Messiah Garvey. And we met in a place in St. Mary on the road to Islington that we renamed Emancipation Park. And there's a reason why we renamed that place Emancipation Park, because that was a former slave plantation. And we had our meetings there. Part of that was to design and devise strategies to take to P.J. Patterson, which of course Ken Jones and so many others did. I can't give you the names of the others who were in that group. This was the original civil society. And the concerts continued. The demonstrations continued. When in 1997, Jerry Rawlings was invited to Jamaica by P.J. Patterson to celebrate with us. That was to celebrate the return of Emancipation Day on the island. We met in Seville. This was an IRFM initiative, now the Seville initiative. That's a history, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. If we forget, we are bound to make mistakes. If we forget, we'll be fighting the same war over and over again. It's an affront. It's an insult. The private sector organization wouldn't dare touch a Jewish holiday, no matter what Jewish holiday, much less when people walk out of Auschwitz. They wouldn't dare touch that. But they will touch August 1, Emancipation Day. Well, I'm saying to you that we're in the very same space that we were in 1865. We're mirroring 1865. We will not forget those who, recognizing at 1865 that the promise of emancipation had not been realized, had to take up arms and fight. This significant uprising, this significant war in Jamaica's history resulted or sparked a whole change in Jamaica to ensure that we never rise up against oppression again. But we talk about the socioeconomic conditions at the time. Poverty and unemployment. Those former enslaved Africans were struggling to find work and to earn a living wage. Land ownership. Those former enslaved Africans and their descendants were denied access to land, forcing them to work as laborers on plantations. This is what we're hearing from the private sector organization of today. Labor is what they're talking about. They even use the word labor. You understand the point I'm making? We're saying, thanks to our ancestors for taking the struggle this far, so that on August 1, we freed ourselves, and on August 1, it was officially done. That the private sector organization is saying, we need more laborers, we want more labor, and so we're going to take back that day from you and give you 3 or 4 days on a bottom. We'll be 3 days down a bottom. But those 3 days down a bottom, I know them cannot tell us what they're going to do with those 3 days. Let them tell us that there will not be a party on the beach in Negril. Let them tell us that they will use those 3 days using them private sector funding to ensure that emancipation and Independence Day are celebrated through education, through fora, through not just wealth making and money making events, but all non-profit events. Let them tell us that. Low wages, another problem. In 1865, workers were earning meager wages. And as a result of that, there was widespread poverty. But there was also prosperity on the island because the planter class was wealthy. The planter class in 1865 is now the private sector in Jamaica. They were wealthy. So there was an unequal and uneven distribution of wealth. There was widespread poverty amongst the black people, but there was wealth. Jamaica was the richest country in the Caribbean. Do you understand what I'm saying? We're there again. Racial disparities, 1865. We're calling it colorism in this time, but I want to say to you that these are still racial disparities, where black Jamaicans are facing systemic colorism, racism, tourism. We have limited access to education. 6,000 Jamaicans graduated from school last, or did they actually graduate? But 6,000 Jamaicans who took the the CSEC and the CAPE exam. 6,000 Jamaicans did not pass one. 6,000 in 1 year. How many never passed last year and the year before that and the year before that? Look at the schools in the rural areas and the deprived areas. Look how depraved the system has made our children. We can't feed our children, so we have malnutrition on the island. And if we test the malnutrition, we'll see the extent to which, even though everybody look fat and rosy, it is malnutrition. 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 We have a mental health problem on the island. Professor Fred Hicklin tried to warn us about that in his scientific study. But here we are. Here we are. These are the conditions of 1865, and these are the conditions today on the island. And Minister Grange and Prime Minister Holness and the opposition leaders and the opposition and everybody in Parliament have told us that Paul Bogle is a hero who did nothing wrong. Should be celebrated in Jamaica as Heroes Week and Heroes Weekend and Heroes Month. This tells us a lot. When ethnic minorities talk about productivity and talk about productivity within the context of the masses of the people of any country, they're talking about slavery. And we're talking about ethnic minorities with power. Ethnic minorities who control the purse strings, ethnic minorities who control the power and the influence in Jamaica. When they talk about productivity, they're talking about slavery in the context of the labor class, because they have created a labor class, and that labor class are the masses of the Jamaican people who are nothing but slaves. I'll be buried in my... This is basically what this is saying. And we're not ready to die. We are not going to die. We're going to live, and we're going to free ourselves from oppression. It's about time the people of Jamaica say that ethnic minorities cannot and must not determine how we live, why we live, and for who we live. You know, we have a situation on the island that requires immediate attention. Immediate attention. We have to deal with it. Colorism, classism, racism, tourism. We have to deal with it. Have we become? What are we becoming? What about the liberation? What about the liberators? Where are the warriors? Where are the freedom fighters? Where are the black people who are tired and sick and tired of being sick and tired? I mentioned earlier that in 1997, after many years of struggle for the reinstatement of Emancipation Day as a national holiday in Jamaica, that P.J. Patterson was the one who invited Jerry Rawlings, Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, to come into Jamaica. For those of you who were there, Jerry Rawlings was all over Jamaica. As a matter of fact, he came to the first Emancipation Park. We named that place on the road to Islington, just by the post office or the bank. You're driving by the Bank of Nova Scotia in Port Maria on that road, and there's a whole farmer plantation over there with a great house and so on, and a sugar wheel and where that whole slavery was taking place. And one of us, I think it was Ken Jones and his and those who were close to him, who purchased that land or leased that land. That was the first Emancipation Park in Jamaica. It was named by us for a reason as Emancipation Park. And it wasn't until 1997 when P.J. Patterson returned and led that process of returning the Emancipation Day as a national holiday to Jamaica, that we moved from that Emancipation Park. And later on, we heard about another Emancipation Park in Kingston. But that be as it may, J.J. Rawlings, when he came to Jamaica, celebrated Emancipation Day with us on this island. And there were rituals around that. The return of the ancestors who were found on the property at Seville. Those ancestors were returned to Jamaica, to Ghana, for a state funeral, a state burial. We were there. Many of us from the island here in Jamaica were there. I won't say who and who, that process is not about that process this morning. What I'm talking about is a process of emancipation as a national holiday, returning as a national holiday here on the island in Jamaica. J.J. Rawlings, and Sister P is reminding me, thank you, Sister P, when he went back to Jamaica, to Ghana, he said to the people of Ghana, we have to reconnect with our people in the Caribbean, in the African diaspora, and we have to remember and to return and remind ourselves to Sankofa of the Ma'afa. When we say Ma'afa, we're talking about the African Holocaust, the slave trade, or the trade in enslaved Africans. And he said, as of today, Emancipation Day, August 1, will be celebrated in Ghana every single year. That was written into law, possibly written even in the Constitution. To this day, 2024, because of Jamaica reinstating and inviting J.J. Rawlings to Jamaica to commemorate Emancipation Day with us, understanding the ritual of Emancipation Day and what that means for our spirit as a people. Because of that, Ghana celebrates Emancipation Day every year on August 1. We were there in 1998 for the first celebration of Emancipation Day in Ghana. We see where other African countries have also taken that up, and I look at it to tell you which African countries are doing this. This is not as simple as a PSOJ is making it out to be. It's a very, very complex issue. It has to do with the spirit of the African people. And those who will try to touch that which our ancestors fought for will understand the science of Emancipation Day, of August morning. Take your hand off it. Leave it alone. Take it out of your mind. Don't even begin to think about it, much less to develop a proposal. I want to ask. They said they did a survey. Did any of them ask you? Did any of them ask you? Nobody asked me. Did any of them ask you? They said they did a survey and 60% of Jamaicans want whatever it is, the question they put to the people. How can you survey the masses of the Jamaican people on a question that you yourself don't even understand? This is spiritual business. This is spiritual. This is not an ordinary thing. You touch this, you gone straight over in a spirit business you touch. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go down there, sir. Don't even try it. In the same way you would not touch the day that Auschwitz locked down or the people walked out of Auschwitz, you cannot touch it August morning. I call upon the Minister of Culture to say what her response is to this. I call upon the Minister of Constitutional Affairs to say, in the constitutional reform process, make it so. Because every minute we hear them come up with this thing, it's a flare up like a herpes simplex virus 2. Every 5 or 2 or 3 years, this thing flare up. So here's the thing. I call upon the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Ford, that as you discuss with your team constitutional reform, make it so that the Constitution says, and whereas August 1 represents the day that African people on this island in Jamaica took their freedom, that this day, August 1, is Emancipation Day and can never be changed. You know the legal jargon. You know how to deal with this. I don't know. But make it so that the Constitution, in the constitutional reform process, says, so that nobody else not think them have the right to come test this unless they want to take it to constitutional court. But make it so that Emancipation Day is reflected as a national holiday in the Constitution. You have the responsibility to do that.
Oh, freedom over.
Everything that he said, that is what I mean. What him say, I agree with all of it. The Chief Justice, Justice Sykes, every word of it. To know the perspective of a church, we want to know what the Minister of Culture, we want to know what the Prime Minister. I challenge journalism to ask every single member of Parliament, every single Minister of Government, their views, their thoughts on this, and to get them on record. But we need an official statement from, if it's not out there yet, I just haven't seen it, I don't know, but we need an official statement from the Prime Minister. We need an official statement from the Minister of Culture. We need an official statement from the Minister of Education. And we need an official statement from the Minister of Industry and Commerce, an official statement from the Minister of Tourism. This is very important. This is very important. This is an existential crisis. It might appear simple, but it is not simple. This goes deep, deep, deep. And until we put an end to this speculation once and for all, then we're going to get it on the other side of the election. We need to hear from the minister, from the leader of the opposition, from the spokespersons within the PNP on culture, on education, on tourism, on industry and commerce. And did I say education? We need to hear from these people. This is important enough to have you say what your thinking is. Private sector is hard to beat, hard to stand up to the private sector. That is why they are so silent, because of campaign financing, because of funding. They owe us to tell us what they're thinking. At the end of the day, they're representing us. Say stand alone because we are not having an interview. We're not doing an interview because sometimes we understand that when it is an existential crisis, sometimes we have to stand and wail. Sometimes we have to band with belly and wail. Sometimes we have to tie our head with red cloth and wail. And this is wailing time. We're not just wailing. We're also doing. We cannot, not on our watch, for our children's sake and for our ancestors' sake and for our sake, we say to the government of Jamaica, to the politicians, the private sector, civil society, the leaders of a church. By the way, where does the Rastafari community stand on this call? Maybe I missed it in the same way I might have missed where the Honorable Minister Babsy Grange stand, in the same way I might have missed where the Prime Minister stand, in the same way that I might have missed where Mark Golding stand, in the same way that I might have missed where all of the politicians them stand. On this call by the leadership of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, for there to be a reduction in the time spent, according to Linton P. Gordon in the newspaper, celebrating the abolishment of slavery and the attainment of independence from British rule, and flaunting their proposal with their surveys and their language couched in capitalism, their capitalist and neoliberalist language of productivity. Productivity, when ethnic minorities talk about it in a country where majority of the people don't look like them, really means free labor, cheap labor, slavery wage. Basically, that's what it means to us. And you're going to do that anyway. So we suggest that you take it down to Boxing Day. One of the reasons why you know their argument don't hold no water We pointed out one earlier, which is we're now in the period of a Heroes' Day celebration. October 11 is important. It is the beginning, the start of the Morant Bay Rebellion or the Morant Bay War or the Morant Bay Uprising. October 11. There was not one bit, there was not a sound from the private sector organization of Jamaica about this. Not a sound. Not a sound. They tell us that they're going to be using the time, and they have their mouthpieces all over Jamaica talking about how, even though it won't be a national holiday, they'll put things in place to educate and to inform. Then what about October 11? Not even one ad. Not even one comment or statement in the newspaper. But we're in the middle of the period. It's another period, an important and significant period in Jamaica's history. 1865. The government of Jamaica has said it was a moment in time where from a moral perspective and from a political perspective and an economic perspective and every perspective, nothing criminal was done. That those who participated are heroes and participated in a process of liberation. Does the private sector organization of Jamaica, do you know, are you aware that October 11 is also significant? This is a time wherein you have done nothing. And it shows you that a lot of this is it's a three card game. It's smoke and mirrors. It is also, as I said before, you could call it all kinds of names, but it is insulting to the masses of the Jamaican people. It is an affront. It is offensive. But let's talk about Christmas and Boxing Day. Because we have Christmas, December 25. We have Boxing Day, December 26. And then you have how many days in December? Then you have 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. All right, so you have what? 5 days in between. 5 days. So you have 2 holidays, December 25 and 26. These are 2 holidays. 2 national holidays in Jamaica. 2 holidays when we're not open and nobody now work. Right? And then you have 5 days in between. And then you have another holiday after the 5 day. The 6th day is New Year's Day. If they were really concerned about productivity in the way they say they are, and they want to make up productivity but them not touch 2 holidays, then Christmas Day is just as good. Christmas Day is just as good. Just as good. So let us, no matter which day it falls upon, let us celebrate Christmas, not on December 25, but on the Friday, on the Saturday, or go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yes. So no matter which day is Christmas, no matter which day December 25 fall on, let us celebrate it on the Friday and the Saturday for the weekend for productivity's sake. I remember now you have one again on January 1. They're disingenuous. They're disingenuous. This is. Why is it still important? It is still important because it is a private sector organization that fund election campaigns in Jamaica, and there's an election coming up and the politicians are silent. Where does the Rastafari community stand on this call? I see someone has sent me, thank you so much for this. In our today, the headline says PNP rejects proposal to merge Emancipation Day and Independence Day, written by Vanessa McKenzie. And it says, the People's National Party has rejected a private sector organization proposal to merge Jamaica's Emancipation Day and Independence Day into a single national public holiday by 2025. And they're quoting Deborah Hicklin-Gordon, the PNP's shadow spokesperson for culture and creative industries. She says, it is an affront to the Jamaican people to propose conflating the Emancipation and Independence holidays, two distinct days with specific symbol and material significance that shape our national identity. This consideration is offensive and undermines Jamaican memory and ancestry. She said PSOJ's proposal would dilute the importance of each day. The suggestion to implement combined holidays as a dedicated period of national reflection and celebration to attract visitors and stimulate the economy is rooted in commercialism, an unsustainable approach to cultural policy and national development. And she goes on to say, a comprehensive culture and creative economy policy could have alleviated the need for this proposal. Modern cultural policy should balance a nation's cultural ethos. And, you know, this is the daughter of Fred Hicklin talking here. Very well said, very well put. Congratulations on that. We like what we're reading so far from Deborah Hicklin. Let me go back. She says, modern cultural policy should balance a nation's cultural ethos with its creative economy, recognizing that some aspects of our heritage must remain sacrosanct while implementing specific strategies to promote sustainable growth in the creative sector. The shadow spokesperson noted the government's failure to develop a holistic plan for the cultural economy while preserving our heritage. She goes on to say, had inadequate time and political will been applied over the past 8 years to establish sustainable cultural and creative economy policies, there would be no need for these expedient proposals at this late stage. She continues, each holiday represents a unique aspect of our decolonization journey, helping Jamaicans evaluate our identity and progress. We must reinforce, not diminish, the significance of these principles for future generations. And Deborah Hicklin continues, given our current challenges, we need to strengthen awareness of these historical milestones that highlight the advancement of Jamaicans of African descent. Emancipation Day, celebrated on August 1, commemorates the end of the enslavement of African peoples, while Independence Day on August 6 celebrates the end of colonial rule and the onset of political independence. And she says this distinction was established in 1996 by a national committee aimed at assessing the impact of our national symbols on fostering unity and national values. All right, well said. We don't need to add anything to that. So this is where we are. Did I miss anything from the Prime Minister of Jamaica? Did I miss anything from Babsy Grange? Did I miss anything from other members of Parliament or other ministers of government? What is the Education Minister saying? What is the Minister of Tourism saying? The Minister of Industry and Commerce or the spokespersons? You know, you're not going to hide this, you know. You can't hide nowhere at all as far as this is concerned. You know why? We are not going to allow you to hide. You have to say where you stand. Once again, I challenge the minister. I call upon the Minister of Constitutional Affairs and the Minister of Justice. Ensure that this is written into the Constitution, and as we go through that process of constitutional reform, it is not too late. You said there's a phase 2, but we want it in phase 1. Addendum it quick. We want it in phase 1. It is urgent, critical. It's an existential matter. My sister and colleague, Saundry, has sent me a note to say some years ago, another member of the private sector took issue with how many holidays we had, and he too said it was affecting productivity. And the PSOJ is saying the same thing, but only difference is that they have been specific about how to address their concerns, which is to adjust a particular holiday. She says, when I count how many holidays we have only 7. School children get the most because teachers don't get the breaks. We think they do. So how can 7 holidays affect productivity? And the way to fix it is to attack the memories of Africans. If anything, we need more holidays. Well said, my sister. Well seconds. What about Christmas? Take Christmas and see if the church will allow it. You think that the church is stronger than the thousands, hundreds of thousands of black people on this island. If we educate our people, inform and educate our people, they will not stand for oppression. And we are going to make it our business to make our people know that is our responsibility, what is being planned, what is about to happen, because you set it so that the curriculum leaves out the knowledge and the education around slavery properly and the importance of Emancipation Day on this island, the struggles. People who have lost their memories will be enslaved again. The process of enslavement is ongoing on this island of Jamaica. It's a new kind of slavery. A new kind of slavery brought on by capitalism and the neoliberal agenda. But our people are waking up. Our people are waking up. And emancipation celebrations into this single extended holiday weekend. We're also listening to other members of civil society who have come out. And Chief Justice Brian Syes has said that commemorating freedom from slavery should not be seen as a business opportunity. And he's right. He said, August 1, 1834, at least for me, and I'm quoting here, he says, August 1, 1834, at least for me, is not just about increased domestic travel of 8.9%. It is not solely about an organized weekend-long celebration that could attract tourists to participate in cultural events, concerts, and festivals, thereby boosting revenue across various sectors. And he continues, I would have thought that the emancipation of enslaved persons of African descent, which was in our case the antecedent to independence, would warrant more analysis than to be described as a mere 5 days. He continues, for us here in Jamaica, the Emancipation Act was perhaps the first significant legislation that removed black Africans from property to persons. This is what Chief Justice Syes said last week. For us here in Jamaica, the Emancipation Act was perhaps the first significant legislation that removed black Africans from property to person. He continues, even then, it was in a truncated manner because there was a period of apprenticeship and provision was made for the compensation of the slave masters in Section 24, defective though it was, but it was nonetheless a major step forward. He added, I want to think that there are some things in our nation's history that really cannot carry a price tag, and freedom and celebration of freedom is one of them. Thank you so much, Justice Syes. He goes on to say, August 1, 1834, without cultural events, concerts, or festivals, thereby boosting revenues across various sectors, is still of great value to me and my family, past and present. He says, it was a free village of Bethel Town, Westmoreland, where my great-grandfather acquired land so he could provide for his son, Thomas Atkins, my grandfather. The journey to being here did not commence on August 6, 1962. It was merely accelerated. Chief Justice Brian Syes speaking there, saying also without August 1, 1834, none of what we are doing here would quite likely be possible. Without freedom, it is difficult, if not impossible, to own property and begin the process of elevating oneself and one's family from being an ex-slave to a free person. Do we need anything more than when I heard Chief Justice Brian Syes' speech, I said to my husband, everything what him say, that me want to say. He just know how to say it better. So anything him say, that me I go with. This is basically my reaction. Because he's put it in such a way that, believe me, we don't know, we need nothing else. One thing we need is for the private sector to come out and apologize to the people of Jamaica, because that is needed to clear the air. The private sector organization of Jamaica needs to apologize to the people of Jamaica and to ensure that there is sensitivity training about all of what Brian Sykes said there. Also for the Minister of Constitutional Affairs to begin to look how to include, what language to use, you know best, but how to include this August 1 as a national holiday and the importance of it in the Constitution, because I'm sure that this is something that we all need to protect. It's a matter of protection. Before emancipation, yes, my sister, but our enslaved ancestors ensure that this was when they look at how many wars and uprisings and resistance to slavery in Jamaica took place on Christmas. Look and see. Because our ancestors recognize that this is no holiday, this is a day for fight. This is a day to struggle against oppression. This is a day to get up. Look also how many of our enslaved ancestors rose up on Easter. Look at the Easter period, not just in Jamaica, but across the African diaspora, and see how many uprisings we have. Some of them even called Easter uprising, ask Chief Tetchy. Christmas uprising, ask Sam Sharp, and we have the Easter uprising, ask Chief Tetchy. And this is not just in Jamaica, because our ancestors understood that these days were for war, for struggle, and for liberation, so that we could come now in our time to celebrate August 1, Eve, Ash Wednesday. No, New Year's Eve on a national holiday. Anyway, half day for true. Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, Easter Monday, Emancipation Day, Independence Day, Heroes Day, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. So you can take Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and Easter Monday. Do anything you want to do with that. We're good with it. Or you can take Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and New Year's Day. We're good with that too. Take your hand off Emancipation Day. 65 represents for us also an important time on this island. Our family, our ancestors, our grandmothers and great-grandmothers were fighting for freedom just the same in 1865. As a matter of fact, in Morant Bay, they rose up in no small way to fight for this freedom, some of these freedoms that we're enjoying today, after they recognized that the promise of emancipation was still not realized. And we want to remember and to remember those ancestors who marched from Stony Gut to Morant Bay with Paul Bogle, those who threw the first stones, those who fought and stood up, in the end were betrayed by the Maroons, but fought because they knew their lives depended on this, for freedom, for liberty, for justice, for land ownership, for equity, for equality, for access. They were still fighting. Lest we forget. We want to remember and remember those family members who stood up. Let me do it right after this. In Jamaica, took place in 1865, when Jamaican people, the masses, black people, rose up against a system for justice. The aftermath of the Morant Bay War, the Morant Bay Rebellion, the Morant Bay Uprising, was one of the most vicious response that Jamaica has seen to any kind of uprising. Blood flow from bank to bank. In St. Thomas, St. Mary, every parish, because them just want to know. People had to change their names left, right, and center. To escape the viciousness of the ethnic minorities who were on this island, who, when the people said they wanted justice, said, work harder, be more productive, merge 3 days in a one, and make it more productive, because profit is the bottom line. I want to recall and remember those people who fought and died for freedom, for justice, for equality, for equity, for the right that we now enjoy to celebrate and to have as a national, public, and an international and a global public holiday, August 1.
Oh, freedom.
Samuel Walker, shot. Ed E. Wright, shot. John Noble, shot. Skipper Cowell, hanged. Edward Donaldson, hanged. Thomas Edwards, hanged. Robert Graham, hanged. Daniel Johnston, hanged. William Moxey, hanged. Abraham Panton, hanged. Edward Panton, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. Sister Isis.
John Collins, hanged. Robert Craven, hanged. Andrew Hicks, hanged. Richard Johnston, hanged. Joseph Helley, hanged. James Lewis, hanged. Benjamin McDermott, hanged. Philip McLean, hanged. Lewis McLean, hanged. William Mark, hanged. Richard Barkley, shot. William Carr, shot. James Bernard, shot. Robert Blair, shot. George Blunt, shot. Albert Christie, shot. George Clark, Richard Cox, shot. Jack Freeman, shot. Henry Graves, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, the martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
James Lang, hanged. William Logan, hanged. Thomas Kelly, hanged. James Martin, hanged. Matthew Niven, hanged. Frederick Wilson, hanged. Abraham Anderson, shot. Samuel Stewart, shot. Gilbert Thomas, shot. George Robinson, shot. J. Brown, shot. William Carr, shot. D. Brown, shot. Samuel Beckett, shot. B. Grant, shot. Peter Bignall, shot. A. Betty, shot. A. Charles, shot. Fortune Carr, shot. I. Johnson, shot.
John Flick, hanged. Sam Clark, hanged. Charles Cunning, hanged. James Johnson, hanged. Henry Lawrence, hanged. Alexander Robinson, hanged. Richard Brown, shot. George April, hanged. John Forbes, hanged. William Simmons, hanged.
Jack Harvey, shot. Thomas Hermington, shot. Samuel Johnson, shot. James Lindsay, shot. Edward Mackenzie, shot. Alan McKay, shot. James Marsh, shot. William Mee, shot. John Price, shot. William Steele, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Lawrence McLaren, hanged. Justina Taylor, hanged. George Taylor, hanged. Charles Farmer, shot. Samuel East, hanged. Thomas Mackenzie, hanged. Samuel Bailey, hanged. William Brown, shot. Richard T. Cousins, hanged. Alex Arnott, hanged. William Taylor, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Francis Stewart, hanged. Richard Thompson, hanged. Thompson Walker, hanged. Charles Brown, hanged. Benjamin Panton, shot. Amelia Stewart, shot. William Hill, hanged. Charles Michel, hanged. Richard Walter, shot. John McCall, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Edward Brown, hanged. Mansfield Panton, hanged. Prince Stewart, hanged. Charles Walker, hanged. Abram Cornwall, shot. James Henry, shot. Thomas Miller, shot. Samuel Richardson, shot. Edward Airy, shot. Berry, shot. William Minot, shot. James Williams, shot.
D. McLean, alias Graham, shot. Joseph Russell, shot.
Hanged. Alan Rose, shot. Jack Garden, hanged. Iman, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Thomas Darby, shot. Duncan Grant, shot. Dennis Tiohan, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
C. Williams, shot. Thomas Johnston, shot. J. Grant, shot. Charles Thomas, shot. E. Edwards, shot. J. Kelly, shot. L. Cobison, shot. Rose Grant, shot. James Gibbons, shot. Edward Clark, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
John Taylor, hanged. James White, hanged. Francis Cox, hanged. James Cohagan, hanged. Prince MacLeod, hanged. Edward Stewart, hanged. Charles Gardner, hanged. William Mitchell, hanged. William Troop, hanged. Jonah Walters, shot. Sonny McFarlane, shot. T. Crossin, shot. Edward Clausen, shot. George Gale, shot. Joseph Bunting, shot. Alexander Jakes, shot. Thomas Reed, shot. Louis Graham, shot. Edward Eason, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Thomas Davis, hanged. Charles Gohagan, hanged. Letitia Gohagan, hanged. Louis Miller, hanged. William Stevens, hanged. James Stewart, hanged. William Thompson, hanged. James Williams, hanged. William Robinson, hanged. George Colburn, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Jasper Livingston, hang. John Mackenzie, hang. Edward Sterling, hang. John Sterling, hang. Colin Reed, hang. Edward Wilson, hang. Francis Vista, hell. C. Wheeler, shot him. Alexander Batson, hang. Robert Beecher, hang. James Medden, shot. Francis Graham, shot. James Wellington, shot. William Wellington, shot. Edward Williams, shot. William Bailey, hang. Robert Crawford, hang. G.H. Deans, hang. William Francis, hang. William Martin, hang.
Richard Sherrington, shot. Richard Brown, shot. Jasper Telford, shot. Thomas Stewart, shot. Abraham Kelly, shot. Simon Wilson, shot. Thomas Ross, shot. Charles Smith, shot. Robert Francis, shot. James Reed, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
George Lindsay, hanged. James Lindsay, hanged. Simon Titus, hanged. Edward Miller, hanged. Thomas French, hanged. Joseph Garvey, hanged. James R. Smith, hanged. John Thompson, hanged. John Miller Reed, hanged. Edward Spence, hanged. John Murray, hanged. Alexander Wilson, hanged. Henry Edwards, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. John Edwards, hanged. Richard Elliston, hanged. Richard Grant, hanged. Henry Griffiths, hanged. Robert McGregor, hanged. George McIntosh, hanged. Edward McLean, hanged. James Mitchell, hanged. Joe Mitchell, hanged. Edward Morrison, hanged.
William Gray, shot. Sidney Line, shot. Charles Logan, shot. James Davis, shot. Abraham Harris, hanged. Smart Papley, hanged. Charles Douglas, hanged. James Stewart, hanged. Edward Reed, hanged. Robert Dyke, hanged.
We call their names.
Henry Patterson, shot. William Minard, shot. William Manning, shot. Fenderson, shot. Dougal Lindsay, shot. Daniel Copeland, hanged. Thomas Darlan, hanged. William Grant, hanged. Joseph Henry, hanged. Henry Holgate, hanged.
George Lindsay, hanged. James Lindsay, hanged. Samuel Titus, hanged. Edward Miller, hanged. Thomas French, hanged. Joseph Garvey, hanged. James R. Smith, hanged. John Thompson, hanged. John Miller Reed, hanged. Edward Spence, hanged. John Murray, hanged. Alexander Wilson, hanged. Henry Edwards, hanged.
One man, name unknown, shot. John Bundy, shot. Robert Cuthbert, hanged. Thomas Drisdale, hanged. John Gibbons, hanged. Thomas Johnson, hanged. George Marshall, hanged. Edward Lewis, hanged. John Mackenzie, hanged. Samuel Noyes, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. We bear witness on behalf of the marchers of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Hanged. John Webber, hanged. William West, hanged. Joseph Williams, hanged. Thomas Williams, hanged. Donaldson, hanged. Andrew Works, hanged. Rosa McBean, shot. Samuel Dillard, shot. Edward Fleming, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. Unknown, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. Woman name unknown, hanged. Henry Bonnyman, shot. Archie Francis, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Johnson Speed, shot. George Wood, shot. William Jones, shot. Andrew Clark, shot. Richard Blake, shot. Richard Graham, shot. Jane Johnson, shot. William Sean, shot. John Davis, shot. Thomas Panton, shot. Sandy McPherson, shot. Boy Unknown, shot. Thomas McCarr, shot. Morris Jones, shot. William Edwards, shot. Nat Bryan, shot. James Bryan, shot. James Henry, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
James Stewart, shot. George Cousins, shot. John Bartley, hang. John Barnett, hang. Toby Butler, hang. Abraham Cornwall, hang. Charles Fuller, hanged. Joseph Graham, hanged. George Grosset, hanged. Andrew Harris, hanged.
October 18, Williams Nicholas, Long Bay, shot. Shot by black soldiers without a trial. Richard Lindsay, shot. James West, shot. Brian King, shot. Thomas Howe Mann, alias Cash, shot. David Beck, shot. Lord Strick Silver, shot. Moses Cornwell, shot. Francis Jacobs, hanged. Thomas Jones, hanged. Richard Kelly, hanged. Colin McDermott, hanged. John McGilvery, hanged. Frank M. Quinn, hanged. Duncan Stewart, hanged. William Stewart, hanged. Alexander Taylor, hanged. Simon Taylor, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Thomas Holgate, hanged. James McLaren, hanged. James Morgan, hanged. George Thompson, hanged. William Bell, shot. Jacob Cousin, shot. William Francis, shot. Samuel Panton, shot. James Scott, shot. William Bogo, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors.
Robert Barkley, Morant Bay, hanged. James Betty, Morant Bay, hanged. Moses Bogle, Morant Bay, hanged. Paul Bogle, Morant Bay, hanged. Robert Brown, Morant Bay, hanged. James Bowie, Morant Bay, hanged. Stephen McCameron, Morant Bay, hanged. Williams Chambers, Morant Bay, hanged. David Douglas, Morant Bay, hanged. James Gore Higgins, Morant Bay, hanged.
John Wright, hanged. James Williams was an African, shot. John Lanjan, shot. Dick Hall, shot. John Hall, shot. John Lawrence, shot. James Mackenzie, shot. William Winter, shot. Man name unknown, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Joseph Clark, hanged. Richard Wilson, hanged. George Craddock, hanged. Jeffrey Davis, hanged. Alexander Hamilton, hanged. Edward Howell, hanged. Charles Maine, hanged. John Panton, hanged. James Thomas, hanged. William Thorpe, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. A luta continua. A luta continua is certa.
I just don't want us to forget that apart from those massacred, many languished in jail. And so today, I want us to remember Thomas Williams, Lendrick Wilson, George Anthony, Thomas Douglas, James Virgin, John Marble, William Gerard, Thomas Albert, alias Albert Bailey, Richard Vaughan, Francis Brown, James Isaac Burke, Samuel Jockey, Richard Affleck, Charles Smith, Henry Fraser, and more and more and more up to 1880, languishing in the General Penitentiary and other prisons around the island.
We call their names. We call their names, bearing witness on behalf of our ancestors.
John Gray, shot. Alexander Forsyth, shot. Hamilton Harris, shot. G.W. Gordon, hanged. Archie Bailey, hanged. Davis Bailey, hanged. John Blake, hanged. John Braun, hanged. William Braun, hanged. Billy Burton, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
William Stewart, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Samuel Phillips, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Robert Pike, 100 lashes and 10 years penal servitude. James Roberts, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Robert Clackchar, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Henry Bryan, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude.
Of Jamaica, an apology. They must apologize. The PSOJ owe the people of Jamaica an apology. The blood of our ancestors haven't dried, whether it is in St. Mary, Westmoreland, Montego Bay, St. James, on the hills and the valleys of St. James, in St. Thomas. We just heard the punishment that was meted out to the people of Jamaica who rose up to liberate themselves from injustice, from poverty, from landlessness, from lack of access, from slave wages and slave labor and ethnic minority productivity trap. We just heard the punishment. So many were shot to death. So many were hung. So many were massacred. So many were sentenced to hundreds of lashes going in. And if they managed to survive, hundreds more coming out. These are the struggles that our grandmothers, we're talking about 1865, you know. These are just our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our grandparents. Their blood not yet dry, fighting for the promise of emancipation that their ancestors and our ancestors fought for. The Emancipation Act of 1838. It's soccer song, you know. It means something. Emancipation Day, August 1, as we told you earlier. Not just about holiday. We don't even consider it a national holiday, even though we fought for that. It has deeper meaning. Deeper meaning, and as we recall that day, this morning, in the period reminiscent of October 13, October 11, October 12, October 13, 1865. A lot of those persons you heard just now who were killed viciously by the ethnic minority representing the private sector on the island in Jamaica. A lot of those you heard there were killed on October 13. October 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This entire week is significant in Jamaica. Where's the private sector? Where is the private sector? So once again, I say to the private sector organization of Jamaica, I know the kind of personality it takes not to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and walk around in it, you know. It's part of the dark triad. But even those belonging to the dark triad will see reason when all is against them. The private sector is digging in its heels and biding its time, and elections are just around the corner. And so those who have been elected, are elected, and will be elected must tell the nation where they stand on this. Private sector organization of Jamaica, for there to be a reduction in the time spent celebrating the abolishment of slavery and the attainment of independence from British rule, has generated widespread discussions in Jamaica land we love. And it must be said that this is a matter that should be widely discussed. He said, the PSOJ maintains that its proposal is not a flippant one, but it is aimed at enhancing productivity by reducing the time spent with these celebrations. He continues, the essence of the proposal of the PSOJ is that the holidays designated for the abolishment of slavery and independence celebrations should be somewhat combined or joined together, thereby saving time and resulting in more time being spent on production. Then he goes on to say, this is Linton Gordon now, and as I said before, if you can get this, it would be really good to read yourself. He says, I support any effort to reduce time wasted that can be spent to enhance productivity. I am therefore suggesting to the PSOJ that the greatest time wasted now in Jamaica is having thousands of Jamaicans lining up at the entrance to banks, sitting in banks, waiting for hours to be attended to, and lining up along the side street, whether in the rain or in the boiling sun, waiting to gain access to their money from an automated teller machine. Linton Gordon goes on to say the PSOJ should speak to its members who are bankers and urge them to extend decency, courtesy, and respect to account holders who are now treated like dregs and slaves, unworthy of shelter from the elements, unworthy of being provided with seats, and unworthy of being attended to expeditiously. Just about all account holders, he says, are treated in the most humiliating way any business entity could treat its customers. The PSOJ should address this matter forthwith. They should start by informing us if they agree with the conduct of the banks in the way they are treating their customers, or if they are prepared to demand that the banks change this policy of daily humiliation to which Jamaicans are being subjected. And he continues, above all, in the interest of the optimal use of productive hours, they should urge the banks to implement a policy that will see account holders and customers getting attended to quickly so that they can go back to their places of work and enhance productivity and minimize the loss of production time. The abolishment of slavery is the most important holiday for the descendants of slaves. Leave it alone. Linton Gordon. Thank you so much, my brother. He says the abolishment of slavery is the most important holiday for the descendants of slaves. Leave it alone. These are long and deep, and we've got many places to go before we sleep. And I know I'm misquoting this poem seriously. Point is, we've got something to do. We cannot go silent on this one thing. We cannot go silent on this one thing. And we must ensure that we raise our voices against any attempt to touch any ancestral holiday, any ancestral date here in Jamaica. It is deliberate. It is part of the deliberate act to ensure that we lose our memories. Memory as resistance is a threat to ethnic minorities with power in countries where they are the ethnic minority. Memories are counter-narrative to colonialism. If we remember, we might challenge the dominant colonial narratives and reclaim our indigenous histories. Memory preserves our cultural identity. Memory preserves our cultural practices. Memory preserves our language and our traditions. Resistance is in memory, is a resistance to erasure. Memory resists the erasure of cultures and of people and of histories, and especially indigenous peoples. They want us to forget. That is why they want to take the day and turn it into upside down, celebrate round, jump up and down there. So no matter which day it is, do not remember that your ancestors fought for this day. That is basically what this is about. But we are resisting this with everything that we've got. Without apology. Without apology. So once again, if you truly have the interest of the people of Jamaica at heart, if you are, as you said, more concerned about the people of Jamaica, listen to Linton Gordon. He says it's the banks. Start at the banks. Because if you go to the bank at 9 o'clock in the morning, prepare for leave at 3. That's basically what it is in Jamaica. A lot of these places that are run by the private sector members, you sit there until you die. That's where productivity is being lost. And the banks, as Linton Johnson is pointing out, is where you can start. So we've got a work to do. What do you have in your hand? Use it. I have a microphone, and this is why I said I stand alone this morning. Knowing that Jamaica stands with me, but I stand alone this morning without an interview. Without an interview, because I understand the assignment that this is an existential crisis. And the children of the enslavers are once again coming at the survivors of the enslaved. Not on our watch. Not on our watch. So to the PSOJ and to all those who support this proposal from the PSOJ, to civil society, because it's an interesting thing, you know, the civil society organization in Jamaica, you know, not everybody, I know we're kind of putting people together, but generally speaking, the silence is killing us. It's too loud coming from civil society. The silence is deafening coming from the politicians, coming from the members of parliament, coming from, and I know I heard from one person from the opposition, obviously speaking on behalf of the opposition, but this is important enough that every single person must come out, just like Ono did come out against, everybody had a point of view on the whole Integrity Commission thing. Everybody had a point of view on that, an opinion on that. This is more important. All right, this is where we say goodbye for today as we make way for the Big A. How are you doing, Mr. Big A? Up and working. So should I ad-lib go on or go ahead and ad-lib? It is not a good idea. I need to come out at the time I need to come out. All right. So the gate's setting up. And let me just thank you so much for listening in, for the interactivity online, because I'm seeing it, I'm reading everything you're posting. There's a whole lot there. Thank you for carrying on the conversations on all the social media platform. Please continue that throughout the week. And remember, what do you have in your hand? Use it. I have a microphone. What do you have? Do you have a pen? Do you have a typewriter? Do you have a computer? Do you have a phone? Call the talk shows. Write into the newspapers. Ask, when you see your members of parliament, ask them. Because sooner or later, if this continues, we're going to have to take to the streets. I'm sure about that. Because we're not going to let our ancestors' work go in vain. The promise of emancipation is still not yet realized, and we're not going to end it right here. So August morning. It's gonna be what it has been. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening on the 107s. Thank you for being part of the family. Thank you so much as usual. My name is Kabu, and I'll be back with you, inshallah, come next week, Sunday. In the meantime, walk good and tell them other one. Howdy.
Yeah.